Good morning/afternoon/evening, everyone. Today, I want to speak about a quality that defines truly great leaders, not just those who lead in times of peace and certainty, but those who rise when things fall apart. That quality is courage. Leadership is not just about titles, authority, or making decisions when the path is clear. True leadership is measured by what you do when it isn't, when you're uncertain, when you're afraid, and when the stakes are high. That's when courage steps in. Courageous leadership is not about being fearless. It's about choosing to act in spite of fear. It's about speaking the truth when it's inconvenient, standing up for what's right when it's unpopular, and being accountable when mistakes are made. It's about making tough calls, knowing you might be misunderstood or criticized. Think of leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Malala Yousafzai, or Nelson Mandela. They didn't just lead people, they risked something. Their comfort, their safety, even their lives. Why? Because courage told them that silence was not an option. In our own lives, leadership with courage might look like standing up to a bully in the workplace, admitting a failure to your team, or making a decision that sacrifices short-term gain for long-term integrity. One of the greatest misconceptions about courage is that it means being fearless. We often picture brave leaders as people who don't feel fear, who charge into battles, literal or metaphorical, without hesitation. But the truth is, courageous leaders feel fear just like everyone else. What sets them apart is that they don't allow that fear to paralyze them. They acknowledge it, they understand it, and then they act anyway. Fear is a natural human emotion. It signals risk, danger, or uncertainty. But when it comes to leadership, the presence of fear often indicates that we are stepping into something meaningful, something that matters. Leaders who operate with courage don't pretend that fear isn't there. Instead, they develop the internal strength to move forward regardless of that fear. Consider the leader who must deliver bad news to a team, knowing it may cause disappointment or stress. The fear is real, fear of backlash, of hurting people, of being blamed. But the courageous leader chooses transparency, trusting that honesty builds a foundation for growth, even if it's uncomfortable. Think about a young entrepreneur pitching a bold idea to skeptical investors. The fear of rejection looms large, but courage pushes them to speak with conviction. Or imagine a teacher who sees injustice in the system and risks their job to advocate for change, not because they are unafraid, but because their sense of purpose is greater than their fear. Courage, then, is not about reckless boldness or blind confidence. It's a measured choice to act with integrity, even when the outcome is uncertain. It's the decision to step forward when staying silent or still would be safer. And this type of courage, this deliberate bravery, is what distinguishes real leaders from those who simply hold positions of power. By acting in spite of fear, leaders show others that fear is not the end of the road. It is the beginning of transformation. Leadership is often romanticized as a position of influence, admiration, and recognition. But the reality is, real, courageous leadership often requires going against the grain. It means taking a stand for what is right, even when doing so invites criticism, conflict, or isolation. Too many people confuse leadership with popularity. But a leader's job is not to please the crowd, it's to serve a higher principle. It's to make choices rooted in integrity, fairness, and long-term well-being, even when those choices are met with resistance. Think about the moments in history when individuals made decisions that changed the course of society. These were not easy choices. When Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat, she didn't do it because it was popular. She did it because it was right. When whistleblowers speak out against corruption, they don't gain friends. They often lose them. but they act because they can no longer support what they know is wrong. In leadership, standing for what is right may mean challenging the status quo, even when it's deeply entrenched. It might mean calling out unethical behavior in a powerful colleague. It might mean pushing back on a business practice that yields short-term profit but harms people or the planet in the long term. And sometimes it means saying no to pressure from investors, peers, or even your own team when those pressures conflict with your values. This kind of leadership requires a moral backbone. It means you have to be willing to risk your reputation, your comfort, and sometimes your position in order to uphold what you believe to be just and true. People may not immediately appreciate or understand your stance. In fact, you might be mocked, opposed, or left standing alone. But in time, the strength of your conviction can inspire others to re-examine their values, to question the norm, and to find the courage within themselves to act differently. Courageous leaders are not swayed by applause or silence. They don't wait for consensus to validate their convictions. They lead from a place of principle, not popularity. And that's what makes their leadership powerful and enduring. Leadership is easy when things are going well, when the team is thriving, the goals are clear, the resources are plentiful, and the path ahead is well lit. But the true measure of a leader is not how they perform in times of comfort. It is how they rise in times of crisis, doubt, and disruption. Adversity doesn't build character, it reveals it. When the storm hits, when the economy crashes, when trust is broken, when morale is low, or when there's no clear roadmap forward, that's when real leadership is forged. In those moments, people don't look for perfection. They look for someone with clarity, composure, and courage. Someone who doesn't run from the chaos but steps into it with conviction. It is in uncertainty that fear multiplies. People fear loss of jobs, stability, direction, or purpose. It's during these times that leaders are called to do more than manage tasks. They are called to reassure, reframe, and rekindle hope. They must be a steady hand when the ground beneath feels like it's shifting. Consider a CEO facing massive layoffs. The easy choice might be to hide behind a press release or delegate the hard conversations. But the courageous leader chooses to face their team directly, speak transparently, and take personal accountability. That moment, though painful, can build more trust and loyalty than years of success ever could. Or think of a healthcare worker in the midst of a pandemic, making impossible choices with limited resources. Leadership, in that context, isn't about titles. It's about showing up, staying grounded, and making decisions guided by compassion and ethical responsibility, even when the answers are unclear. In every field, education, business, activism, the arts, leaders are tested not when everything goes right, but when everything feels like it's going wrong, when plans collapse, when support dwindles, when emotions run high. That's when courage steps in to fill the void where certainty used to be. Real leaders do not pretend to have all the answers. What they do offer is the courage to keep moving forward, the humility to admit what they don't know, and the resilience to adapt without losing sight of their value. These qualities don't just get teams through hard times, they define legacies. In a world where diplomacy often favors silence, where avoiding conflict is seen as tactful, and where difficult truths are swept under the rug to protect egos or reputations, speaking the truth has become an act of courage, and for leaders, telling the truth, especially when it's hard to hear, is not just a moral obligation. It's a cornerstone of effective and ethical leadership. Truth telling isn't about being blunt or harsh. It's about being honest, transparent, and principled, even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. It means telling your team when a project is failing. It means admitting when you've made a mistake. It means having difficult conversations about performance, accountability, or ethics, not to criticize, but to grow, to protect, and to move forward with integrity. Courageous leaders understand that withholding the truth to avoid discomfort only delays the inevitable. It creates a false sense of security where problems fester under the surface. A culture built on half-truths or sugar-coated communication eventually erodes trust. People begin to question what's real, what's being hidden, and whether their leaders truly have their best interests at heart. On the other hand, when leaders speak the truth, even painful truths, they cultivate a culture of trust, clarity, and authenticity. People feel respected when they are told the truth. They feel empowered when they are given honest feedback, even if it stings at first. Truth sets the tone for accountability. It invites growth. It strengthens relationships, because people know where they stand. Consider the leader who stands in front of their team and says, "We didn't meet our goals, and here's why." Or the leader who looks an employee in the eye and says, "I believe in your potential, but we need to address this behavior honestly." These conversations are rarely easy, but they are necessary. And the courage to have them is what separates a manager who maintains control from a leader who builds character, both in themselves and in others. There are also times when speaking the truth means challenging power structures or calling out injustice. It might mean going against popular opinion. It might cost you friendships, favor, or influence. But courageous leaders don't stay silent in the face of wrong. They understand that leadership isn't just about guidance. It's about guardianship. Guardianship of people, of truth, and of what's right, even when there's a personal cost. Courageous truth telling is not always rewarded immediately. It can make people uncomfortable. It can cause tension. But over time, it creates an environment where trust can thrive, where people can be real, and where progress becomes possible, not just on the surface, but at the core. In moments of failure, setback, or disappointment, many instinctively look for someone or something to blame. It's a natural defense mechanism, a way to shield the ego and preserve reputation. But leaders who possess real courage choose a different path. They step forward, not backward. They take ownership, even when it's uncomfortable. And in doing so, they demonstrate one of the most powerful forms of leadership: accountability. Courageous leadership is not about appearing flawless. In fact, it's often the opposite. It's about having the integrity to say, "I was wrong," or "I made the call and it didn't go the way we hoped." It's about recognizing your role in a result, regardless of whether the consequences are positive or negative. That level of honesty takes strength. It requires vulnerability, but it builds credibility in a way that deflecting, dodging, or pointing fingers never can. When a leader shifts blame to their team, external circumstances, or even fate, they may temporarily escape criticism. But they also lose something far more important: the trust of those they lead. People instinctively know when a leader is being disingenuous. When they see someone consistently refuse to take responsibility, they begin to question that leader's character, judgment, and motives. Over time, that erosion of trust creates distance, disloyalty, and disengagement. On the other hand, when leaders own their decisions, even when those decisions don't pan out, it has the opposite effect. It humanizes them. It makes them relatable. It tells the team, "I'm not above the process, I'm in it with you." That kind of ownership inspires people. It models humility and self-awareness, and it encourages others to be honest and take responsibility themselves. Imagine a project fails due to a flawed strategy. A leader could easily point out that the market changed unexpectedly or that team members didn't execute well. But a courageous leader will say, I signed off on that strategy. I should have asked better questions. I'll do that next time. That shift in tone transforms failure into a learning opportunity, not just for the leader, but for the entire organization. Taking responsibility is also crucial when dealing with interpersonal conflict. Whether it's a miscommunication or a moment of poor judgment, courageous leaders do not let pride prevent them from apologizing. They are strong enough to say, I could have handled that better, knowing that vulnerability is not weakness. It's a bridge to deeper respect and connection. In a culture where blame shifting is often the norm, a leader who accepts responsibility stands out. Their courage creates a ripple effect. It encourages others to admit mistakes without fear, to learn from them, and to grow. That kind of environment doesn't just breed accountability, it breeds innovation, resilience, and excellence. One of the most transformative effects of courageous leadership is that it doesn't exist in isolation. It spreads. Courage is not just a trait, it's a catalyst. When a leader displays courage in their words, decisions, and behavior, it sends a powerful message to everyone around them. You can be brave too. In this way, courageous leadership becomes contagious. It empowers others not only to follow with trust, but to step into their own potential as leaders. People naturally look to their leaders for cues, especially in uncertain or high-pressure situations. When a leader models fear-based thinking, hesitation, or avoidance, it creates a culture of self-protection and silence. But when a leader stands tall in the face of risk, uncertainty, or criticism, others are inspired to rise with them. Courage gives people permission to speak up, to take initiative, to bring ideas forward, to be themselves. Imagine a leader who admits they're unsure about the future, but commits to moving forward with integrity. That level of transparency and resilience encourages the team to do the same, to bring their best, even when they don't feel perfect or certain. Or consider a leader who supports someone taking a bold risk, even if failure is a possibility. That moment tells everyone, innovation is welcome here. Growth matters more than perfection. Courageous leadership also means creating safe spaces, environments where people aren't afraid to voice concerns, share unconventional ideas, or challenge the status quo. This kind of culture doesn't happen by accident. It takes a leader willing to listen without ego, to encourage dissent respectfully, and to reward risk-taking, not just success. It's in these spaces that people grow the most. They learn to trust themselves because someone they look up to trusts them first. They become more confident because they are supported, even when they stumble. They become more resilient because they see that failure isn't fatal. It's part of the journey. Courage empowers others not just emotionally, but structurally. Leaders who act with courage push for fairness in the system, equity in opportunity, and inclusion in decision-making. They challenge biases. They speak up for the voiceless, and in doing so, they make room for others to step into roles they may never have imagined themselves worthy of. This ripple effect is what makes courageous leadership so powerful. It doesn't just move an organization forward. It lifts people. It creates teams that aren't just efficient, but alive with purpose. People begin to lead not because they were told to, but because they were inspired to. When courage flows from the top, it doesn't stop there. It becomes a current that carries others toward their highest potential. History does not remember those who stayed quiet in the face of injustice, who played it safe when change was needed, or who waited for permission to act. History remembers those who stepped forward when it was hardest to do so, those who led with courage. From revolutionary activists to visionary innovators, from trailblazing educators to compassionate public servants, the individuals who truly changed the world are those who are willing to take bold action in the face of uncertainty, criticism, and fear. Courageous leadership is at the heart of every significant movement, transformation, and breakthrough. Whether it's in civil rights, science, technology, business, or education, progress has always required people who refused to accept what is and dared to pursue what could be. These leaders often began with no guarantees, no clear path, and sometimes no support. But they moved forward anyway, driven not by a need for glory, but by a deep sense of purpose. Think about figures like Nelson Mandela, who endured 27 years in prison and emerged not with bitterness, but with a commitment to reconciliation and justice. Or Malala Yousafzai, who stood up for girls' education in the face of violent opposition and became a global symbol of resistance and hope. Or consider people like Elon Musk, who risked personal fortune and faced public doubt while pursuing ambitious visions for technology and humanity's future. These leaders were, and are far from perfect. But what sets them apart is not perfection. It's courage. They led when it cost them something. Courageous leaders do more than influence events. They reshape cultures, redefine what's possible, and leave lasting legacy. They may be met with resistance, called reckless, or misunderstood in their own time. But in hindsight, we often realize that it was their willingness to act despite fear, to hold fast to their vision, and to defy convention that pushed society forward. Importantly, changing the world doesn't always mean global fame. Courageous leadership can happen in small, consistent acts. The teacher who believes in a student no one else does, the parent who raises their voice for better policies, the manager who champions diversity in a resistant workplace, or the community leader who mobilizes people to solve local issues. These individuals may never make headlines, but their courage leaves a legacy in the lives they touch, the systems they influence, and the values they uphold. Courageous leaders also understand that change rarely comes without cost. There will be criticism, setbacks, and failure, but they are willing to endure those hardships, not because they enjoy conflict, but because they are committed to a mission greater than their comfort. They don't just lead for applause, they lead for impact. Because at its core, courageous leadership is about being bold enough to imagine a better world, and brave enough to help build it. So, as we reflect on what it means to lead with courage, let us remember this. Leadership is not about being the loudest voice in the room, or the one with all the answers. It is about being the voice that dares to speak the truth, the heart that dares to stand firm in adversity, and the soul that dares to believe in a better future, even when the path forward is unclear. Each of us in our own spaces is called to lead, not by title but by action, not through fear but through conviction. The world doesn't need more perfect leaders. It needs more courageous ones, those who are willing to stand alone, speak up, take responsibility, and empower others to rise. Because when we lead with courage, we don't just change outcomes. We change people. We inspire hope. We build trust. We ignite movement. And ultimately, we create a legacy that outlives us. So step forward, not because it's easy, but because it's right. And lead, not in the absence of fear, but with the courage to rise above it. That is the kind of leadership that transforms lives. That is the kind of leadership that changes the world.